And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you all for joining us. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And where do we begin? Obviously, the funeral of George H.W. Bush. There we have it. George H.W. Bush will be laid to rest today. You heard yesterday here on KIDO Talk Radio the coverage of George Bush. And I wanted to start off with something a little different. And this is something we did the Miller Minute on yesterday. And it goes to show you the idea of volunteering and making a difference. And really, President Bush personified that. And we see that in Idaho today, do we not? We see that in the Treasure Valley. And I just want to share with you a couple clips here and get your thoughts as we start on a very chilly 12-degree morning in the Treasure Valley. Again, big ups to everybody working right now. If you're delivering newspapers, listening to KIDO Talk Radio, thank you very much to Kevin Miller in the morning. If you're delivering newspapers and not listening, well, again, stay very warm. It's very dangerous outside. But really, let's take a look and a listen to the idea of helping one another.
To solve our country's social problems, we need people, we need every individual to respond to the problems right around them. And when each American is no longer willing to accept that someone on their street or someone on their town is homeless or jobless or friendless, then that's when we will truly renew America, when everybody understands that they're going to help their neighbor.
There we have it. Helping their neighbor. And that's what we continue to personify. We continue to promote. Neighbors helping neighbors. Neighbors in need, if you will. And we see that with all the good people here in the Treasure Valley, volunteering, donating, whether it's in public or in private. That's what President Bush, that will be his legacy, right? That will be the legacy. And who could forget the 1,000 points of light?
For a better America, for an endless, enduring dream, and 1,000 points of light. This is my mission, and I will complete it.
The 1,000 Points of Light campaign. And yes, people were moved to tears yesterday. And again, we can agree to disagree on how successful President Bush was. Many of you that call in have called him a globalist. But when you have someone's family get up and give the eulogy, as President Bush did for his dad, you can't help but be moved to tears. And you can't help but think of that shared experience when he's talking about his dad, who at times they had a rather turbulent relationship.
Jeb and I were too young to remember the pain and agony he and Mom felt when our 3-year-old sister died. We only learned later that Dad, a man of quiet faith, prayed for her daily. He was sustained by the love of the Almighty and the real and enduring love of her mom. Dad always believed that one day he would hug his precious Robin again.
You know, and then you have the idea that President Bush coming out that he didn't want to spend a Christmas without his wife, Barbara, and he wanted to leave before Christmas, and he got his wish.
He was a genuinely optimistic man, and that optimism guided his children and made each of us believe that anything was possible.
And there we have it. The funeral of President Bush at the National Cathedral.
The most decent and honorable person I ever met was my friend George Bush, one of nature's noble men. His epitaph, perhaps just a single letter, the letter L for loyalty. It coursed through his blood. He never hated anyone. He knew what his mother and my mother always knew. Hatred corrodes the container it's carried in.
There we have it. Now, the networks, they decided to do something different yesterday. They decided it was time to take shots at President Trump, and we'll get your reaction to this because, let's face it, Everything is a shot at President Trump. Here's ABC.
One of the most remarkable images of this day, all of the living American presidents together, even in a divided time. So I want to bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, tonight, because, John, it seems it might have been one last call to service for the late president, George H.W. Bush himself, orchestrating this rare moment of unity.
In fact, David, the Bush family reached out to the Trump White House months ago. They had a clear message. The message was that President Bush wanted President Trump and the First Lady to be part of his memorial. And if you looked out at that crowd today, you also noticed that the Bush family also invited many of the president's top advisors, top White House officials were also there. And for his part, President Trump honored every request that the Bush family made in planning this week's events, and perhaps most importantly, he remained quiet, uncharacteristically so, leaving the spotlight for this week entirely on the memory of the 41st president.
Well, how dare the president act decently? And again, why is this important? Because it influences behavior. It influences behavior because you have people say, well, that Trump, he's a mean Trump. Now he's being nice. We're going to find something out. Let the man rest in peace. And let's move on to the big issues of the day. The caravan continuing to roll. We have the battle over the budget. By the way, what is Congress really doing right now? And if you were ever thinking about getting a job, kids, I'd look at running for Congress. Think about it. They're back in session, but what are they really accomplishing? Well, they're having meetings. Now, many of us have been to places and they go, oh, my goodness, not another meeting. Meetings are great when you have nothing to do, literally nothing to do. But if you've got work to do, and you know this at the office, at the factory, wherever, oh, well, we've got to meet. Well, again, there we have it. Then when you sit there and it takes time away from everything else, takes time away from getting things done. Right? I mean, that's really where we are when it comes to these endless meetings. So, I'd like to see something. I'd like to see Congress do something. And, of course, we will take your memories about the great President Bush. And, again, people are going to say, well, Kevin Miller, he was this, he was that sort of thing. I totally understand that. I totally get it. The New World Order was a response to communism. I don't think it was the deep state, but we can debate that issue. That's one topic. But getting back to President Bush and the life that he lived, that's when men were men. When you went out and did things, and we don't have the gender confusion. We don't have any of these things that we have today, where you have people saying, well, I don't want to be too masculine. I don't want to be too this. You went out and you provided for your family. You had a family. You owned up to your responsibilities. You didn't run away from them. I'm sure there were tough times for the Bush family. But how many of us that saw the funeral, saw the clips of the funeral, would think to ourselves, my goodness gracious, what a glowing tribute. And then former Senator from Wyoming, Alan Simpson, saying, L for loyalty. Is there a greater compliment than that? And by the way, coming up, we're going to defend Christmas. It seems that every year we have to do this. Every year we have to sit back and we have to defend Christmas because you have the devious little libs, the DLL, the devious little libs. They're at it again, everybody, where they take images of Christ, of Jesus, and they use them for political gains. You might have seen this on some of the social media things. But if you haven't, you think to yourself, why do the lefties continue to use images of Christ and make it controversial? So here we have a nativity scene, right? A nativity scene. And this is a church in Massachusetts. Well, to send a message to the president, to the people, what they've done is they've put the baby Jesus in a cage. That's right. They've put the baby Jesus in a cage. And the reason why they've done that is to protest the policy concerning deportation and everything else. Now, thankfully, this is not in Idaho, but you think to yourself, is there not one thing sacred when it comes to the DLL, the devious little libs, and what they're about? So we'll hear that story. We'll get your calls on this at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I just sit there and I think to myself, can we just enjoy Christmas? You know, we're getting ready for this Saturday. We'll be involved once again with Channel 7, with 7 Cares, Idaho Shares. We will be at Albertson Stadium in the parking lot, myself, Reverend Bill, the crew. Maybe we'll see our friend Tommy Ahlquist and other people that come by. Dave Petzo will be there. It's a wonderful way to celebrate the season of giving, right? To celebrate the season of giving, of sharing, of celebrating the birth of Christ. I don't know what type of religious institution can justify doing this, but let's check out this story here and get your thoughts on it. Remember, what the visual here is, they have a nativity scene, and they have the baby Jesus in a cage.
Attention, it's at a church, and the baby Jesus is in a cage. It is not the first time the Dedham congregation has used a nativity scene to make a point.
This year, they tell WBZ's Beth Germano that members want to send a message about immigration.
It's an unconventional take on the nativity scene. The baby Jesus in a cage. The wise men closed off by a wall. For St. Susanna's Parish in Dedham, this creche is meant to be thought-provoking.
And we try to take a picture of the world as it is and to put it together with the Christmas message.
That message this year questions peace on earth, since Jesus represents migrant children being held at the southern border separated from their parents. The wise men, the caravan of migrants behind the border wall. Here they believe it's very much the message of Jesus.
Jesus was about taking care of one another, and this is not the way to take care of one another.
We're not trying to scandalize anyone. We're trying to reflect back a reality that has to be looked at.
But mixing politics with religion isn't sitting well with some who believe this nativity scene has crossed a line.
This is where you come to pray. This is not where you come to be preached at about what you should think about politics.
The pastor says this is not necessarily a dig at the Trump administration. Rather than political activism, he prefers to call it gospel activism.
We talk about Matthew 25 and feeding the hungry and welcoming the stranger.
And Jesus, they say, was no stranger to politics.
Christ was political. I mean, he was hung on a cross for making political statements and bucking the authority, and that's exactly why he died.
The nativity scene.
There we have it from our affiliate WBZ in Boston. So the idea of politicizing Christmas, politicizing Jesus, seems to be doing well in the area east of the Great River. But when you're out, do you say Merry Christmas? Or is it Happy Holidays? And what's wrong with just having a regular nativity scene? What would you do? What would be your reaction if you saw that here in Idaho? You know, I think there's a difference between separation of church and state. And when we go to church, we want to be fed spiritually. But to say Jesus was about politics, Jesus was about salvation. So let me paint the picture for you again at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You have the nativity scene back and forth. And then all of a sudden you have the nativity scene, and then you have Jesus in a cage, the wise men, and you just heard, well, they're the migrant workers, they're this, that, and the other. I'm sorry, I didn't see Jesus jumping over a wall. Or the 3 wise men throwing stones at the Romans or the Jews. But again, just another example of the devious little libs. So can't we just let Christmas be Christmas? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And coming up, more on medical marijuana, mushrooms, you and me. We're just getting started. Stay warm, everybody. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Violence shall no more be heard in your land. devastation or destruction within your borders. You shall call your walls salvation.
With faith in Jesus Christ, we receive the body of our brother George for burial. Let us pray with confidence to God, the giver of life, that he will raise him to the perfection in the company of saints.
But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you.
So through our tears, let us know the blessings of knowing and loving you, a great and noble man, the best father a son or daughter could have. And in our grief, let us smile knowing that Dad is hugging Robin and holding Mom's hand again.
There we have it. There we have it. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO, remembering President Bush. When you hear that, how can you have an issue? How can you have an issue at all with that man? You disagree with him politically. That is one issue. Number two, the idea of using the nativity scene to promote your politics. As we said, a church in Massachusetts has the baby Jesus, the nativity scene. They have Jesus in a cage. And they're saying, well, this is about the migrant workers. This is about protesting Donald Trump. This is about that everybody should have the ability to come to America. Well, who's going to pay for that, right? That's what it comes down to. And finally, one of my personal favorite topics, another state decides to legalize the dope.
Now that recreational marijuana is officially legal, what does that entail? It means adults 21 and older can grow and possess marijuana at home, but no more than 12 plants. As far as buying weed is concerned, that will still be illegal for now. The issue there concerns specifics on how to license sales, which may not be resolved before 2020. So the question becomes, if recreational weed is legal, how does one get it? Advocates who pushed for legalization say the easiest way is for someone to simply give it to you. But the law says no more than 2.5 ounces can legally change hands. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
There we have it. Michigan becoming another state to legalize the weed. Now, yesterday, if you missed it, later in the program, we told you about a KIDO Talk Radio website blog, and that was Oregon looking to legalize the mushrooms. Now, I don't know anything about mushrooms. I'm woefully ignorant about mushrooms. I'm woefully ignorant about mushrooms, except when you put them on your pizza, your salad, or your steak, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You put them on your steak, and you have a good time with mushrooms as edible. But there are things called the magic mushrooms. Shrooms, if you will. I guess they're like LSD or smoking pot or something like that. So Oregon is going to do what California failed in its attempt to do, and that was to allow psychedelic mushrooms to become legal. Now, again, we can all thank you, Obama, for this. We can all thank good old President Obama for what he did. Because he was the first president that decided to allow states to legalize. In other words, it's the 10th Amendment on steroids. You have a federal law that says marijuana is illegal. You have a federal law that says you can't do so. So the people that are running the pot shops, got to be careful about that. The pot shops, they can't use banks. So they're running around with, piles and piles of cash, like you see in Narcos on Netflix, because it's against federal law. And then you have states like Michigan decided, well, we're just going to legalize recreational marijuana. Now, a lot of people say we should do that in Idaho, and we have this daily discussion. In fact, I was looking at another billboard, keepidaho.org or whatever they call it, and they said many of the weed that you have, it has pesticides in it. Well, that's why it needs to be government regulated. No, it doesn't. It's bad. It's illegal. It opens up Pandora's box. And then you have the state of Oregon saying, well, we're going to do you one better. We're going to jump to making mushrooms legal. And then people talk about the medical benefits of that. And I'm going to myself, Okay, what are the medical benefits of that? We really don't know. It's utter speculation. Now, anyone who has been involved in someone who is or has fought cancer, they will tell you that marijuana helps ease the pain much more than the opioids. And that is a just cause. The CBD oils. I get it. I understand it. But how do you stop people from using that to doctor shop like we've seen in California and Washington? And then before you know it, what happens next? It is, the state of Idaho becomes another edition of High Times Magazine. So what thing I would like to see the president do at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, is to see the state continue its anti-marijuana, anti-drug, anti-mushroom stance. And I'd like the president to enforce federal law. And I'm sorry that Jeff Sessions is gone, because I think he had a great opportunity to do that. Now, the wonderful thing about this program is that we can agree to disagree. Many of you disagree with me. In fact, we had people on the Kevin Miller Show Facebook page saying, who made you a doctor? Mushrooms are great. In fact, in this article on KIDOTalkRadio.com, you have people saying it can cure suicidal thoughts, depression, PTSD. To me, it seems like a promise of a snake oil salesman as opposed to anything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you informed. We're going to give you some traffic, some weather, and everything else. And then I'd like to delve into this. And if you're new to the program, this is a talk show in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. That's 107.5 FM, 580 AM, where we have people going back and forth expressing their conservative. And sometimes we have libs that call in, the DLL, the dirty little libs. They're welcome as well. Unlike them, we don't seek to silence them. We seek to engage them, because that's when we all get better, right? You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And do want to remind you, you can check this out on our website, but if you don't, the Boise Fire Department, once again, helping the Toys for Tots and the Idaho Food Bank. You can drop off your food and your unwrapped toys at any Boise Fire Department station. Thank you to both organizations. Simon, sorry it took us so long to get you. Simon Owen joining us, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So we've got Facebook accused of giving special treatment to certain companies for data. Here I thought we could trust Facebook.
Morning. Well, yes, I mean, it's more scrutiny, that's for sure. What's happened here in Britain is Mark Zuckerberg's emails have been published, the Facebook founder. Facebook has faced a lot of questions in recent months about the way it handles people's personal information, and a number of those questions have come from Britain's Parliament. Now, in Washington, Mark Zuckerberg has testified to Congress, but he has refused repeated requests to testify to lawmakers here in the UK, and that has annoyed those lawmakers. And so as they continue a wider inquiry into fake news online, what we have here is a release of 223 pages of documents on Facebook's internal discussions obtained by a British lawmaker, and it details how the company discussed many things, the value of its users' personal information, it says that it accuses Facebook of cutting special deals with certain companies to give them access to more data and then shutting out companies that it considered threats. There are documents in which Facebook executives discuss how they were keeping details from their users about how the company was collecting and exploiting their information. And there's an exchange from 2015 where Facebook leaders discuss how they can begin collecting call logs from users of Android smartphones, and how that can be done without imposing undesirable permission screens for people. Now, there's a lot of tech in there, and Facebook's conclusion on this, it is pushing back hard. It says that the disclosure is misleading. It says it only tells part of the story, and it says its bottom line on this situation is it says we never sold people's data.
Right. Of course, Facebook not really used to this entire scrutiny. The stock has been taking hits. And, of course, and Simon, as you reported and others in the past, they pledged, well, we're going to be a good Facebook this time, and haven't really seen that lately, have we?
Well, I mean, these cover a period from 2012 to 2015, which is a time when Facebook was had predominantly been on your PCs, on your desktop computer, and it was shifting to mobile devices, and it was figuring out how that might connect with various services. So there are these suggestions that companies that were in the good books included Airbnb and Lyft and Netflix, and that they got preferred access to data, where other companies were restricted to receiving that after Facebook shifted certain data policies, and one of them is an app called Vine that belongs to Twitter. So, you know, there are two sides to this, obviously, and Facebook has put out extensive responses to this, and it says that these documents represent internal conversations about various ways in which it could build a sustainable business model, and Facebook says any business does that. But this is more ammunition for its critics, and in Washington, Senator Richard Blumenthal has looked at these documents, and he said that this is part of, quote, mounting evidence that Facebook acted chaotically, recklessly, and lawlessly by granting access to private consumer data for financial gain. And there is also actually a bit of a wild story about how these documents have come to be public and how they came to be in the possession of a British lawmaker, a man called Damian Collins. These emails feature in a lawsuit in California. An app developer is suing Facebook, and the documents were sealed by the presiding judge. But the founder of that app company was in London on business recently, and it appears that this lawmaker, Damian Collins, got word that the founder was here, and the founder was instructed to hand these documents over under parliamentary powers. And according to one report here, he was confronted at his hotel, escorted to Parliament, and ordered to hand the papers over or risk imprisonment. And that, we think, is unprecedented. But the lawmaker at the centre of it is saying that he believes there is considerable public interest in having this material out there.
Crazy stuff, Simon. And, you ever use Vine, by the way?
I'm aware of it. I don't think it's around anymore.
I know. For a while, though, it was, this big deal. Everybody was vining stuff, and it was like 5 or 8 seconds of video that they could send. And it's funny how, when you mentioned Vine, it just is just like a lot of things, popular 1 minute, but goes away the next.
Indeed, and that's tech for you, I suppose. But yes, Vine is certainly one of the services that it's suggested in these documents that Facebook shut off its access to Facebook Friends data because it considered it a threat to Facebook.
Right. It's a fascinating thing because, Facebook, it's not really a public utility. It's optional. It's funny how we're redefining roles and such, and that might be good business practices on one hand, but on the other, governments might have an issue with it. So I guess we'll have to continue to litigate that. Simon, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, Simon Onan joining us. By the way, Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio, exclusively here on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. And like I said, on our website, we've got to pay a story about the Boise Fire Department. Every year they partner with Toys for Tots, and every year you can go to any Boise Fire Department station and you can drop off your unwrapped toys. Or you can have canned food items and donate those to the Idaho Food Bank. Now, I believe they're picking up the toys December 20th, and the food bank will pick up the food January 1st. But if you have some extra stuff around the house, if you're at one of these wonderful local retailers and you say, hey, how about these toys? Why not pick up a couple and drop them off at the Boise Fire Department? We appreciate everybody, that makes our community such a better place. By the way, it's very chilly outside, hovering around 12 or 13 degrees. Be careful if you're going out. If you're out in the elements, make sure that you do your very best to protect yourself and to drink a lot, right? To drink a lot so you keep yourself hydrated. Here's an interesting story that I think you're going to enjoy. A dad makes his daughter walk 5 miles to school after she was kicked off the bus for bullying. Now, many of the people say, well, this is a bad thing. This is horrible. This is horrific. But many of us can probably relate to it. I'll share that story with you next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Girl gets a lesson in tough love when she's kicked off her bus for bullying.
Let me make this extremely clear. Bullying is unacceptable. So today, my beautiful daughter is going to walk 5 miles to school in 36-degree weather.
Oh, yeah, that'll teach her. The dad driving behind his daughter in Ohio. He says he wanted to hold her accountable after she was kicked off the bus for a second time. That video has been viewed 15 million times on Facebook. So what do you guys think? Is that a good thing to do? Good lesson?
And there we have it from our friends at Fox and Friends. A good lesson. Of course, I'm surprised somebody didn't call social services on the dad. In the old days, that's really what you did. You walked to work, you walked to school, and if you were a discipline problem, it's fascinating when we think about this at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, how our whole standards of discipline have changed, whether it's the end of corporal punishment for most families where you try to use reason and know, and the kid is involved in cooperative education, as opposed to how most of us, probably maybe in your 20s or 30s, certainly in your 40s and 50s, were taught that the parent is always right, and if the parent, and if you crossed the line, whether you were bullying, whether you did something at school. I can remember one day telling my dad, well, Mark did something. He goes, I don't care about Mark's behavior. I care about you and what you did and responding and being disruptive. So here you have a dad who decides, okay, you're going to be a bully. You're going to be doing these things. Well, you can walk to school. Now, those of you that are involved in customer service or education, higher education, lower education, whatever you want to call it, do you come across these type of parents anymore? And we're not going to bag totally on parents, but people are very hypercritical of the state of education here in Idaho. But when you talk to educators, as we did yesterday, by the way, thank you, Valley View, for having us. Looking forward to coming back again. Wonderful folks in Valley View. Looking forward to Eagle High School tomorrow, Bishop Kelly next week. But do love going to new schools and really love going back to our old ones. But when you talk to people on the inside, and these are people that teach at college as well, they say, look, it's the parents. And sometimes the parents are very well-meaning, but they've got to work 2 or 3 jobs. And let's face it, if you're working 2 or 3 jobs to keep the roof over the head, there ain't much left to make sure Billy, Tilly, me, and Willie are doing their homework or that they're behaving in school. And then you have some people that, unfortunately, don't realize the value of education. So it's not reinforced at home. If you have a kid in school for 4 or 5 hours a day and then at home it's Fortnite or it's Call of Duty or it's running the streets, chances are education is going to lose out. Right? So here you have this dad saying, look, you're going to be a bully. I'm going to hold you accountable for it. And that happened in Ohio. I'm wondering if we heard about that here, would we be saluting the father, or would we be just going, well, let's call social services at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The changing dynamic of parenting, the changing dynamic of discipline. And we see it today, right? There's a new feature coming out, and I'm actually thinking about discussing this, that parents are actually putting GPS ankle bracelets, like the kind they use for prisoners, on their teenagers to make sure they know where their kid is at all times. And you have people that, put apps on phones so they know where their kids are or their loved ones or something of that nature, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Isn't that amazing? And you go back to what this dad in Ohio is doing, and you do something wrong, there are consequences. Don't we need to get back to that? KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:55. Kevin Miller in the morning. 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
I'm just Channel 7's Eric Everett.
Let's get to the phones, and we go to R&R, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey,
a quick reminder, first of all, for most of us that are gifted to have a car, the coolant, the protectant to save your car's internal engine components, the antifreeze, really should already be there. But if you got something that hasn't been exposed to the wind and this brutal, chilling cold, check your coolant. And just, I had an occasion to come from the land of the north and go across the valley last weekend. I was blown away, Kevin. I had not been. My chauffeurs were able to lock in and navigate by that crazy little device that. Anyhow, we cut across the valley. I dropped into that USIC, and I thought that I could not believe. I was aghast. I thought it was, what is this war zone? All of those carcasses of vehicles that are just blown apart. That's just incredible.
Or last night on Fairview Avenue in Meridian, there were 2 accidents where people were rear-ended because people are on their phones texting and doing all sorts of crazy things. And here's another one, since we're talking road safety in R&R, maybe we'll continue this next hour. You got people that are driving around and their windshields are all frosted up.
Insane. Hey, I got to be up right at the edge of my beloved West Yellowstone. Here's the tip. I went to work at 4 o'clock in the morning and went to school in Rexburg. I was trained by the best of the best. You get a piece of corrugated cardboard, like that's waxed, that produce comes on, and you just lay it across your windshield from side to side and lock it in. I had a 69 Buick, and all I had to do was peel that thing off morning or night, and it lasted the whole winter up there frozen in. So you just lay it down and put your windshield wipers underneath crushed paper cups, and nothing's locked down, and you just take it off in the morning. That's going to save a lot of people a lot of time. There's no scraping, nothing involved. Wax, it has to be cardboard waxed on both sides. Love you, Kevin.
Love you, R&R. Thank you.
Keep it lit. Bye-bye.
KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM is your home for Fox News on the radio. Keep it here. Stay informed. Good morning.